looky what I found. Hat cam or rider cam. It was in my black jacket with the patches. I was doing something last spring and I was in a hurry and I forgot where I put it, and apparently I put it in my jacket. Of course, when I hung my jacket up for you know, after not needing it for when it got warmer, I couldn't find it. I looked everywhere, and when I went camping this past weekend, I brought my jacket out of the closet and I threw it in the truck. When I pulled the jacket out of the truck, something fell out, and it was my hat cam. So finally I'm back doing morning drives, but this is a afternoon drive as I am headed home. But today, the story today was something that kind of sparked from a conversation I had at lunchtime with some coworkers, and it's about weird neighbors. She was talking about, she had a neighbor at where they have a deer camp, and there's a guy that lives out there, and he was always shooting guns every time they were up there for the weekend. I mean, he'd just go off shooting guns. I mean, yeah, it's a deer camp. Yeah, you expect some shooting, but I mean, this guy, she said this guy, morning, noon, and night, he was out shooting. Apparently his dad owned a gun shop, and so he had access to all the guns and all the ammo he wanted, so he was just blowing ammo every day. I would say non-stop, but frequent enough to be an annoyance. And he was kind of a weird character from what she was telling me. But recently, the authorities busted him for having like hundreds of marijuana plants in his house. So now he's got a felony conviction, and he lost rights to all his guns. So she says she goes up there now and nobody's shooting. She says it's pretty nice. And it kind of reminded me of some neighbors I had when I was living in Virginia. I had some weird neighbors. Of course, everybody has a story about a weird neighbor, regardless of what age or where they live. So they're everywhere. And of course, probably at one point in my life, I was that guy. I was that neighbor. But the one neighbor I was telling her about, I've got probably three in this drive, but the guy that lived across the street from me when I lived in Virginia, he was an older guy. I would imagine he was late 60s, early 70s, and I only saw the guy once in a while. You know, he'd be coming and going from his house, but maybe once or twice a week I would see him outside his house. And most often when I did see him outside his house, he had a lawn chair, and he sat outside at the end of his driveway in a lawn chair smoking cigarettes. And no matter if it was cold or hot, he had this brown like bomber jacket on. And I'd mow the grass, I'd wave to him, I'd say hi, and it was either like he was antisocial and didn't want to talk to me, or he was deaf and blind, or he just didn't see me. But he never responded to me. I just kind of sit out front and smoke cigarettes. But he had passed away, and nobody really knew that he had passed away until, of course, after he passed away, one of his family members, I don't know if it was his daughter or his son, somebody came by and cleaned out the house to sell it. And the neighbor to the right of him talked to the lady. I wasn't home, but talked to the lady that was in there cleaning the house up. So now that I remember, it was probably like his daughter or something. But she said they had to throw everything away. Nothing in the house was salvageable. the where we lived in Virginia, it wasn't cold enough to have a basement, and the water table was pretty high, so a basement would just essentially flood. But there was a crawl space, and most of the houses in the neighborhood I lived in had like concrete posts, pylons you call them, and there was like a 2.5-foot crawl space under the house. And there's usually a trap door inside the house somewhere that led you into the crawl space. Well, the lady that came to clean out the house, she said that the crawl space was full of those styrofoam meat trays that you get when you buy hamburger or steak or something like that. But this guy apparently shoved all those trays under the house instead of putting them in the garbage. So that was one weird thing he did. The house stunk, obviously, because he hadn't been, well, one, because of the meat trays, and two, the guy rubbed human waste, let's put it that way, on the walls. Every single wall had brown smear marks on the walls. And you know, everything in that, and I remember there was just a pile of, I didn't even think about wanting to go over there and look at what was on the street. But she put everything on the street, and of course, I don't know, I think where I lived in Virginia, you could call up Waste Management and they can come and they'll haul all that stuff away for free. I felt sorry for those garbage guys. And then there was a guy that bought the house. He was like a house flipper, and he bought the house for like $8,000, the house and the property for $8,000, and was flipping it. And he said he had to rip every single piece of drywall out of that place because it was just nasty. But that was one neighbor. Well, 2 doors down, as you look at my house, 2 doors down to the right. This house had been there empty for the most part. We lived there for 8 years, and like the first five or 6 years, the house was empty. We don't know who owned it. Mostly empty. People would come and go, renters, whatnot. And the last neighbors that I remember being there, this guy was like a Finnish carpenter. He, I would say, knew the neighbor across the street from the house. But the guy across the street from the house, he'd been there for years. And he says, yeah, he knows that guy from other jobs, on, you know, other building jobs. He was a contractor. And he said, yeah, that guy does real good work. He does finished carpentry, you know, molding, crown molding, all that stuff. He does really good work. And that's all I pretty much knew about him. But there's the neighbor on the corner of the block. We were good friends. And she says, you know, she sits on our porch a lot because she doesn't have air conditioning. She's not really a busybody, but when you sit on your porch, you see kind of what goes on. But she says, it was like Saturday morning or something, 8 o'clock, you know, she was outside, and she saw the dude in the house 2 doors down from me and his girlfriend walking to the convenience store around the block, and they came back. And each of them, you know, carrying with both hands a 12-pack or maybe a 24-pack of beer at 8 in the morning. So, best case scenario, they had 4 12-packs between the both of them. And she said they sat on their porch and they just drank. Popped the beer, drank, smoked a cigarette. You know, and smoked and drank and smoked. Didn't say a word, just sat there, drank and smoked. It's just, I'm sure for some people that's entertainment, but I just, not for me. I don't know if there's any drink, my favorite drink that I could drink that much of in a short amount of time. And she says by 12 noon, you know, 8 8 to noon, they drank all that, and they were headed back to the convenience store. I guess they didn't get more the first time because they couldn't carry anymore. They went back to the convenience store. They got, you know, 4 more packs, 12 packs of beer. And it did that all day long. I was like, good Lord. You know, I don't know if they went inside to pee all the time, or they just held it, or just peed their pants. I don't know. It's just beyond my level of comprehension. The third neighbor story in that house that we lived in, there's a house behind us that was pretty transient. People came and went all the time. And one particular time, this guy moved in, never saw these people. They had a dog, and they put like a square of chain link fence that, and the fourth side was my fence, the fence between my property and their property. And the dog, I had a little dog, I had a little Cocker Spaniel, Golden Retriever mix, and you know, my dog was pretty tame, but this dog would like dig under the fence to get to my dog. So we kept my dog inside, and we wrote a note to the guy and taped it to their door and said, hey, you guys need to fix the fence, the hole in the fence, move the dog, whatever. And what the guy did, basically, he took a big rock and he just threw it in the hole. Didn't try to backfill it or nothing, just left the dog there. So we wrote another note. It's like, your fix isn't working, your dog's still getting into my yard. So he moves, I think he moves the fence, and he puts I guess he gets a fourth section of fence or something and moves the fence to, you know, closer to his house, away from my fence. And but he doesn't fix the hole, and a couple of sections of my fence were tore up. So we wrote a note. We said, look, either you fix the fence, or we're going to take you to small claims court and get it out of you that way. Now, we were not holding our breath to get any kind of compensation from these people. Oh, and by the way, we were, you know, we walk around the block for exercise, you know, walk the dog, and we noticed that they didn't have an electric meter. They just like had a piece of copper shoved into the hole where the electric meter went. So, you know, they were probably not paying their rent either. But anyway, luckily, we showed up one day and there were 3 new slats in the fence and the hole was covered up. And then like a couple of days later, the house was empty. It was just the most bizarre thing in the world. So those are my weird neighbor stories. You know, if you have a weird neighbor story, make a video or leave a comment. It'd be interesting to hear or read about. Alright, that's all I got.